You're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. The Arab-Russian Cooperation Forum discusses in Moscow the latest developments in the Middle East. Russia suspends all sorties over Syria in line with a ceasefire deal brokered by Russia and the United States. And economists value the Sultanate's efforts to shift towards a green economy. Those were the headlines. Now for the news in detail. The third session of the Arab-Russian Cooperation Forum, held in the Russian capital Moscow, discussed the latest developments in the region, especially with regard to the endeavor of the Arab League to revive the Palestinian cause, in addition to the current situation of the Syrian crisis. Arab foreign ministers and the Secretary General of the Arab League, Nabil Al-Arabi, took part in the forum. The Sultanate's delegation was led by His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi bin Abdullah, Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs, while the Russian side was led by Sergei Lavrov, Foreign Minister. His Excellency Yusuf bin Alawi bin Abdullah said that the forum came to highlight deep-rooted Arab-Russian relations. He added that the participants agreed to establish an Arab center in Moscow to serve Arab-Russian relations. He also said that Russian Foreign Minister stressed during the meeting his country's welcome for various aspects of cooperation. His Excellency, the Minister responsible for Foreign Affairs, also said that they agreed on a mechanism for political consultation between Arab countries and Russia. The meeting was of great importance due to the current situation being witnessed by the Middle East and North Africa. The final statement of the event stated that the Russian and Arab stances with regard to crisis in the Middle East. It also welcomed measures taken by Arab countries to combat terrorism. The participants also dealt with the war in Yemen, current situations in Iraq and Libya, and the status of Arab-Israeli talks. The attendees agreed on the need to establish peace in the Middle East and intensify efforts to combat terrorism. The Russian military said its warplanes suspended all sorties over Syria today in line with the ceasefire deal brokered by Russia and the United States to avoid any bombing mistakes. The Russian and American militaries also exchanged maps of Syria while fighting stopped in 34 Syrian settlements. A senior representative of the General Staff, Sergei Rutskoy, said this was being done to rule out any possible bombing mistakes and in accordance with the UN Security Council resolution. A ceasefire agreement brokered by Moscow and Washington called for the cessation of hostilities from 2200 GMT yesterday between government forces and opposition groups. Rutskoy said more than 6,000 fighters had joined the truce deal, saying the Russians handed their lists to the US counterparts. He added that the Americans also received a list of 74 settlements and areas which should not be bombed. Airstrikes by the Arab coalition fighting Houthi forces in Yemen hit a market northeast of the capital, Sana'a, killing 40 people. The strikes at Naim district in Sana'a province also wounded 30. Meanwhile, several were killed and others wounded in clashes between the Yemeni forces and the Houthi group in East Sana'a. Tensions ran high today among migrants who've been stranded for days in Idomeni camp at the Greek border with Macedonia. In the morning, the line of people waiting for food stretched over 250 meters as scuffles broke out among people frustrated with exhaustion and fear that they will not be allowed to continue their journey toward Europe. The migrants, mostly Syrian and Iraqi families with children, overcrowded the camp at Idomeni as Macedonia refused to admit anyone in more than 40 hours, while a steady stream of people continued to arrive on foot or by taxi from the south. More than 6,000 people squeezed into the camp, which only caters to 2,500, forcing many to sleep in the open despite a thunderstorm and temperatures dropping to 2 degrees Celsius. With tensions rising amidst more arrivals, Idomeni is rapidly turning into one of the focal points in the largest migration crisis in Europe since World War II. Foreign ministers from the 10 countries of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations said today that they were seriously concerned by recent developments in the disputed South China Sea region and will seek a meeting over the issue with China. At the end of their annual retreat held this year in the Lao capital of Vientiane, they noted their worries and reaffirmed the importance of maintaining peace, security and stability in the area. The strategically important South China Sea is at the center of a territorial dispute involving China on one side and a number of Asian countries on the other, including Vietnam, the Philippines and Malaysia. Tensions have ramped up since China began a massive land reclamation program in 2013. Vietnam's foreign minister said that he was seriously concerned about the situation and called for the non-militarization of the South China Sea. Other topics included ways to bring about ever closer economic cooperation since the advent of the Asian Economic Community at the end of last year. A suicide bomber killed an Afghan militia commander and at least 10 others in the eastern province of Kunar near the border with Pakistan today. The provincial governor said the bomber rode up on a motorcycle to the entrance of the government compound in the town of Asadabad and blew himself up. At least another 40 people were also wounded. The governor said the suicide bomber detonated his explosives attached to his body in front of the provincial government headquarters. As a result, the blast, 11 innocent people, including children, were martyred. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the apparent target of the attack, a tribal elder and the militia commander, was among the dead. He was closely involved in a number of operations against the Taliban in his district last year. Still to come in our news bulletin. Voters in 12 U.S. states will head to the polls on Super Tuesday. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. Officials and economists expressed their confidence in the success of the Sultanate in its efforts to shift towards green economy and achieve the goals of the 17th Sustainable Development Plan 2030, adopted on September 25, 2015 at the United Nations Summit held in New York. The head of the Food and Environmental Policies at the Sustainable Development Division in the UN Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia said the Sultanate has proven over the years that it is able to manage large and important files in terms of social and economic development. With the participation of 71 horses, Oman Equestrian Federation concluded the endurance race season 2015-2016. The 90-kilometer long conclusion race was held at the horse racetrack in the Wilaya of Barka. It witnessed great competition among the participating horse riders. Horse rider Mohammed bin Ahmed Al-Ajmi, riding the horse Dam, won the endurance race. A number of villages in the Wilaya of Sohar have great touristic potential, and one of such areas is Hensi village. The mountainous area is surrounded by greenery, palm trees, as well as a beautiful falaj in addition to a wadi. The village is distinguished by a peaceful atmosphere. The citizens of the village call on the bodies concerned to make the way leading to the village easier by asphalting roads around the area, which will contribute to attracting the tourists from inside and outside the Sultanate. The U.S. presidential election is kicking up a gear with Super Tuesday. On the 1st of March, voters in 12 states will be making their voices heard, helping to select the party nominee for either Democrats or the Republicans. Here's a report.
Trump is looking like the man to beat on Super Tuesday. He's won 3 of the first 4 primaries for the Republican nomination to be the party's presidential candidate, and his success looks set to continue.
This is really the last chance of the more establishment Republicans, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz, to win some contests and to start taking momentum away from Donald Trump. He's polling very strong nationally, but he's also polling very strong in all of these Super Tuesday states.
Voters in 12 states will head to the polls on Super Tuesday. Each of the states is allocated a certain number of delegates according to its population. Democrats will be voting to allocate 18% of their delegates, Republicans nearly a quarter.
Smaller campaigns can do well in the early states where they can essentially go door to door, go city to city, meeting with actual voters. At this point, though, it really starts to become more about advertising, more about your ability to get to large events quickly.
The field has already narrowed substantially after Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina and Nevada. 12 of 17 Republican candidates have already dropped out of the race. 3 Democrats called it quits early on. Yet Hillary Clinton has had a much tighter race than expected with Bernie Sanders. Super Tuesday could be the time for her to break away.
Those are states where the Democratic Party is primarily minority, African American, Hispanic, and these are groups that Hillary does really well with. So she's probably going to rack up large totals in some of these states. So Bernie's got to do just as well in some of these New England states that are happening to balance that out.
Unless underdogs can provide an upset on Tuesday, it could be the beginning of the end of their presidential campaign.
Now for the general weather forecast. Clear to partially cloudy skies will prevail over the northern parts of the Sultanate, with chances of scattered rainfall, occasionally thunderous on the Hajar Mountains and the nearby areas, as well as Governorate of Musandam. Winds will be northeasterly light to moderate on the coastal areas overlooking Sea of Oman, while along the rest of the Sultanate it will be easterly to southeasterly light to moderate. Seas will be moderate on the western coast of the Governorate of Musandam with a maximum wave height of 2 meters. Rest of the coast it will be slight with a maximum wave height of 1.25 meters. This is the Sultanate of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. The Arab-Russian Cooperation Forum discusses in Moscow the latest developments in the Middle East. Russia suspends all sorties over Syria in line with a ceasefire deal brokered by Russia and the United States. And economists value the Sultanate's efforts to shift towards a green economy. With that, we come to the end of tonight's news bulletin. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studios, it's good night.